We are on, Narad.
Namaste, friends, disciples, and devotees, to Evenings with Sraddhalu. Namaste, Sraddhalu.
Namaste, Narad.
This talk tonight is extremely important. We know there are so many against what Sraddhalu and others have to say positively. And the topic tonight is future wars and more on Persia. So listen carefully. Namaste.
Yes, Namaste. Yes. In a sense, we will be continuing the theme of last time, which was centered quite a bit on Persia and Sri Aurobindo's comments on Persia, and then move on to a broader scope that emerges from these recent events, which point to the direction in which the future of warfare has already shifted across the world. I touched upon something last time, but that's just the tip of something much bigger. So going to first what has been happening in Persia, in what is now Iran. Just after our last session, there was a major event that took place, I think within 24 hours or so, that Trump initiated the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran. And this entire operation is something so extraordinary, so outstanding in the history of warfare, in human warfare, that it required some elaboration and some appreciation for what was done, how it was done, and the underlying preparation going back nearly more than 15 years. As you would already know, because it's been so much in the news, that just after our last discussion where I had spoken of how Israel could only go so far in stopping the nuclear program of Iran, and it needed specialized weapons which only the United States has, which are the bunker-busting, penetrating bombs that can go deep, even 100 meters underground, depending on the nature of the soil, of course. And that's the only way by which the underground facilities for the nuclear bomb production could be eliminated. So we look at the big picture now. You know that Trump went ahead and actually did it. The bombing took place. But I want to look back at the big picture behind. You see, all through, there was the impression that Trump had created that he was waiting, that negotiations would probably, hopefully solve the problem, and he was willing to wait 2 full weeks after Israel's bombing of Iran, that they would still come to a negotiating table. Now, these 2 weeks are critical. This phrase 2 weeks is critical because it was also part of the intelligence information that the United States and Israel had received, that Iran was practically 2 weeks away from making their first atom bomb. There had already been sufficient enrichment, as you must have heard in the media, of nearly 400 kilos, 408 kgs of refined, purified uranium, taken to a certain degree of purification from which one small step is needed to make the bomb itself. There had already been testing with specialized facilities, the triggers for the nuclear bomb. You see, a nuclear bomb is not just putting together fissile material. The fissile material itself has to be triggered. The triggers are extremely specialized. So specialized that the technology for their production itself is highly classified. Although we know what it is required, you just need to have so many triggers in a spherical shape, compressing the uranium in one single moment down to a precision of a few nanoseconds. That's the theory. How do you create that compression to that precision of timing? Because if your timing is off, you will not get a proper nuclear explosion. And the mechanism by which you create a very high pressure wave with that precision of timing down to nanoseconds, That's really at the base of it. And these things have to be, so a lot of these were stolen. They were bought clandestinely, stolen, etc., through various fronts. Some of these were bought as technologies from other nuclear powers. And Iran had been testing these also. They had also advanced delivery of missiles which were ready. The missiles are already known. But into the missiles, they have been placing the size of the nuclear warhead. And so the missiles have been modified to place the nuclear warhead. Now, all this is information that was already known going back, let's say, about 5 years, when Israel did a very daring raid in Iran of a special secret facility where Iran had hidden all these documents and materials to be away from the international agencies which were supposed to inspect them. So they kept denying that they're making atom bombs. And when the inspection teams came, they would come to these specialized facilities. They would be shown whatever was needed just to be able to have a nuclear reactor for peaceful purposes. But there were additional facilities or spaces where they would take the enrichment of uranium to the level needed for a bomb. 3% is all you need for a nuclear reactor. For the bomb, you have to hit some 80% or something. And the facilities for these and the documentation for these were kept away in different spaces. Israel's intelligence penetrated this specific information, and they had timed the guards in that specialized facility to a precision where they had exactly so many hours and minutes within which they could steal the documentation. There were some 24 safes, if I remember right, with specialized data in different safes. Israel was able to penetrate the intelligence to find out which safes had the correct data that they needed for the bomb evidence. They cut through, in the middle of the night, they went in with their commandos, they cut through the safes, took out that, I believe it was nearly 500 kilos of documentation. And they touched only the safes that they knew were needed. They were not interested in administrative elements, they were only interested in the bombing data and technology. These documents they took, brought back to Israel and exposed to the world. Anybody seeing that, it was obvious that Iran was moving rapidly towards nuclear missile. Now, why would they do that? Their declared purpose, which they stated themselves, was to eliminate Israel. And that was their first and primary purpose. Now, this documentation is 5 years old. But the actual process of refinement takes time, specialized technologies, the testing of the triggers, etc., all of which had been piling up in the last 1 year. And apparently the intelligence was they were 2 weeks away. Now, when Trump said, I will wait 2 weeks, there was a point to that. It was a strategic move. The strategy was that Iran thought, oh, we have 2 weeks in which to complete the bomb. And then the whole negotiation would change. So they accelerate the process of bomb making. So this is a very tactical move on the part of Trump managing the whole situation. And Iran moves rapidly now to accelerate its production to get the bomb out. And the strategy would have been to make a test. They had already been making deep holes where they would do the testing. All the things were in place. And that's when this whole process started. First of all, Israel created the ground on which a stronger intervention was possible. They eliminated the entire counter-attack facility. So much more data came out subsequent to our last discussion. And Israel followed the similar strategy which Ukraine used against Russia, that they had set up over the last 1 year drone facilities inside Iran. Some of these were hidden in trucks, they were hidden in warehouses and other places, we would not know exactly where always. But they were placed close to the locations from which the anti-aircraft missiles and guns would be used if Iran saw an attack from Israel. So when Israel actually started the attack and all these guns were pulled out, just nearby were the drones that had been waiting with bombs on them. And so within a few minutes, as soon as these things came out, the drones came out also and knocked out all these facilities. And this is the amazing part. You have to really understand the strategy and the precision of timing and coordination involved. That as the planes leave Israel, here on this side, there are human beings, but also some of them are remote controlled from within Israel. and they were using the normal mobile data facility to monitor and even control the drones. The drones come out. As soon as the Israeli radar detects the Iranian radar detects the planes coming, they bring out all their guns and their missiles. They are ready to launch, and the drones hit them at that precise point. The whole thing had been precisely timed. The facility for this had been in preparation for, they say, more than a year, where the drone parts, bombs, and the facilities, the ground team, locations, all these were put in place. Now, for actually bringing so much of the material in, they used ships, they used suitcases sometimes, they used trucks, and for which they had to set up front companies going back a few years, because they had to be legitimate appearing front companies to allow this kind of import. And all across Iran, they had set up this facility. Now, this is one of the points which I will elaborate later, which has changed completely the future of all warfare. So this took place, and then by the time the planes came, most of the countermeasures in Iran had been knocked out. Nevertheless, Iran did manage to send a few number of missiles. I believe it was 1/5 of what was expected, 1/5 of what was possible, because of their systems being brought down so quickly. This hammering went on for several days. The end result was that Israel had complete control of airspace of Iran. That's about the time when Trump said, we will wait 2 more weeks, or I'm willing to wait 2 more weeks. But at that time, within 24 hours of that statement, they had already launched the B-2 bombers. These are stealth bombers, which flew all the way from the United States to Iran and back continuously. Now, these are the most advanced bombers with the most advanced stealth facilities that officially no one should have been able to detect all the way through, forward and back. If they are detected, then of course the game is up. So a lot depended on the stealth capacity, but also these are the bombers which are capable of carrying the kind of bunker buster bombs which had to be used to destroy the underground facilities. Now, from the point where Israel's attacks had started, Iran assumed that eventually there might be a bunker buster bomb use. And they had begun to create countermeasures by putting special coverings of very thick concrete above the entry points for airflow to their underground facilities. Now, I'm coming to a very precise technical point. This is very important to understand, as you will see shortly. In any massive underground facility, the critical element missing is always airflow. Food, water, other things you can bring in by various means. Airflow, fresh air, oxygen is the most critical element. And for this, there has to be a major vent, generally an inlet and an outlet, and the two are kept separate. If they're close enough, too much of the out will go back in. So they're kept separate. So typically there have to be 2 vents. Vents themselves then become the most vulnerable points, and you have science fiction going back now nearly 50 years with Star Wars, where they send a missile through the vent to the heart of the whole facility and explode, if you remember your Star Wars movie. And so it's a well-known weakness. So there are methods by which the vent itself is not a straight tube, and it's made to go zigzag so that anything entering will be blocked at multiple layers. So many variations to how this can be done. And it's simple enough as a technology to prevent. And eventually, of course, it's how much concrete you have from the exit to the depth of your actual facilities. So we are told that Iran had already started building this about 2007. Especially this Fudro facility, if I remember right, the name, where they did the most advanced purification of uranium for weapons grade uranium. And for that you need very high power centrifuges. Uranium is converted into a gas made to rotate at very high speed, and the densest layer then is separated on the outer edge of the centrifuge. Centrifuges are narrow, high speed, very high speed machines, and so high that the slightest vibration would create an enormous shift of momentum, and the machine itself would break apart. That's the kind of precision required, as well as control and the gas within that. So it's a very high technology which Iran had managed to acquire and then replicate and built. So this was underground at a great depth of more than 100 meters, we were told. But the construction for this started in 2007. Now, recently, subsequent to this bomb, the leftist media was so hostile to Trump, they did everything possible to try to prove that the bombing was a failure. And so the Trump government came out with a lot of details about what they had been doing, and this is what I'm sharing. I put a special link for this. Most of the mainstream media did not go into details of what the Trump government shared. They went into a lot of detail, technical details and historical details. And most of the media just covered it up, gave select quotations, questioning even what they gave. I've given one link which comes from a particular website that specializes in war-related information, and that has given the most detailed coverage that I could find. It's the article. The website is called The War Zone, and they give all the details going back quite a bit. So for those of you who are really interested, and you'll see how much mainstream media has not told you. This is the fascinating part. So going back 2007, I'm going into this in some detail because you will understand the preparations that have gone into it. The US is watching this happen. Of course, Israel is watching this happen, that they're building this special underground facility in the mountains. So even if you have bunker buster bombs, they have to go through the mountain, and your actual facility will be deep inside. And the bunker buster bombs cannot go that deep, at least the ones that are officially available. They're watching carefully, and what the US revealed was they dedicated 2 people who from that point on till today, for 15 years, every day and night were only focusing on this. They were tracking each vehicle entering the underground facility, what kind of materials were going through satellite pictures and through ground surveillance also, and other means which are easy to do. You can actually go to the companies which are hiring out trucks and reach into their data and get all kinds of information which can be quite interesting already. So every means that they could, all the data was being brought, from which this group was reconstructing what is being built inside the mountain. Obviously, it goes beyond that. They also stole plans, some of which was the critical plans that Israel got 5 years ago, in which the entire design of the underground facility was also known. Now, all this is important to understand because built around what was known, a specialized bomb was developed going back 15 years. So this group was looking at the facilities, tracking and building their model in real time as Iran is building in the physical world there. They're building their model, and then they have bunker buster bomb technology, which is being now refined for this specialized facility, for Iran specifically for this, going back 15 years. These bombs then are tested with advanced simulation software. So at one point, the government revealed, and this is one of the fascinating things, this single facility was using the bulk of the United States simulation supercomputer time. Imagine what that means. Is as if the US military's entire supercomputer access for simulations is dedicated to creating the bombs and simulating the bombs to work for this specialized facility within the given parameters of its design. This is going back 15 years. And as those bombs are then built, fine-tuned, and they are tested for physically, of course, but through simulation first. So when finally the go-ahead was given by Trump, you have to understand there was a preparation going back 15 years. When Israel began its attack, Trump already knew, and the government and the military had already prepared with their weapons going back 15 years for this attack. Think about what that means. Okay, the implications are enormous. And at this point, the bombs are sequenced to explode one after the other for precise entry all the way down to the deepest point in the underground facility. So I'll explain how that works. There are in all 2 entry points. For each entry point, there are 6 bombs. All of them are of the same size. Bunker buster bomb, in this case, the facility and the size of the bomb is 30,000 pounds, is the weight of the bomb. Its explosive power is, of course, enormous. The explosion itself destroys things by three means. It creates a shock wave, it has fragmentations, and then it has the damage which is caused by the pressure itself. The fragmentation in this case is non-critical. It's the other things which are, and the heat, the burning heat. So the shock wave, heat, and the pressure wave that takes the heat all the way through. So in this case, you're going to use the bomb with very specialized goal designed for this location, but you have a series of 6 bombs. Why? The first bomb enters the shaft as deep as it can go and blasts it. Now assume that the shaft is zigzag. At that point, it goes as much as it can and it explodes and breaks through part of the zigzag. The second bomb then has to enter exactly the same hole and go much further in and break whatever remains. The third bomb goes still further and break what's next. Fourth bomb, fifth bomb. Particularly the fourth and fifth would be then entering the entire facilities inside the mountain and exploding inside. The shock wave there, just that alone, would be enough from the shock to destroy all the centrifuges. Because the centrifuges are rotating at such a high speed that if you shake them a little bit, it disrupts the center and the centrifuge can break. So the shock wave alone would be enough to destroy the centrifuges if they were in operation at that point, as we are assuming that they are. And after that, the fire, explosion, etc. would complete the rest. Now the explosion, when it takes place so deep down, the power of the punch, you remember it's gas which is expanding, 30,000 pounds of explosive expanding at enormous pressure. 1 to 1,000, 1 gram becomes, let's say, 1,000 even, in the explosion. It goes through the entire cavernous system. Assume again, because these things are designed like that, there are doors which are called firewalls. The doors themselves are made such that even if there's a blast, it will not go through to the other side. But assuming at that point, if they are not waiting for an attack, then those doors are open. If they are in full operation for bomb production, then all facilities will be open because they are in an urgency to finish everything within 2 weeks. This is why I'm saying that 2 weeks number was very interesting for this reason. And they're going at high speed, they're all out, and when the bombs actually penetrate and explode, it goes through the entire facility with a shock wave and with the fire. So you've not only destroyed equipment, and the most important equipment is the centrifuge and other related, which are very fine equipment. You've also eliminated people who are specialized in utilizing those. Before that, already the most advanced scientists who were involved in this process had been eliminated by Israel. And the whole goal was remove completely once and for all Iran's capacity to create nuclear weapons. Now, if you knew all this beforehand, why didn't the attack take place 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And here comes the rationale. This is one of the most important things you have to understand in the way it works, and you have to understand it also from a spiritual point of view in the way forces work in the context of a spiritual battle, and the way karma works. And we will come to a quotation from Sri Aurobindo shortly about this. So if you, let's say somebody starts running to cause harm. You know he has got a knife. He is running all the way. He is going to kill somebody. You can stop him right there. First problem is he can deny. He can say, no, I was just thinking of something else. I was practicing. I was doing some exercise. He can make up any story. You have no evidence that was his intention. Intention can be hidden, covered up. You stop him there, tomorrow he'll find another way and another way and another way. If you catch him halfway through, where it's obvious what the intention is, even then there can be denials, but also you stop him there, tomorrow somebody else will take his place. The only way you can eliminate impermanence in a way that you can never recover from is to allow it to go all the way to the last stage and then knock it out there. At that point, the entire force has been fully utilized It's about to fulfill its purpose and you block it there. From that point to recover and rebuild the whole force and momentum is the most difficult, and it is also psychologically a huge setback. But most importantly, the entire build-up of the force, which was initiated to destroy somebody or something, is exhausted. If you block the force before it is exhausted, it takes other forms. The karmic energy takes other forms. You allow it to exhaust itself and end it there, that's when you finish the force. So there's a psychology behind, which of course has its material and practical aspects, but this is the reason why the whole program was allowed to come to a certain stage. Now from this point, if you see, and there are many videos out there which will say, oh, Israel has other agendas. Maybe there are individuals in Israel which have other agendas. I'm not concerned with that. I'm looking at this big picture. If their agendas, which may be secondary to this goal, can be utilized for ending the Iranian nuclear weapon, why not? This is the problem you will face. There were people who have also sent links, they put up links in the comments saying, oh, here's an alternate view showing how Netanyahu or others have had agendas for whatever domination, regional domination. I don't know. Maybe they had, maybe they don't have. If they have, and that agenda is, so to say, hijacked for this purpose, I don't have a problem there. The thing, though, you must really go back to and appreciate, before this could be done, the arms of Iran's terror network, which were through the two Hezbollah and Hamas, they needed to be eliminated. If they were not eliminated, then such an attack would get Iran to attack through their proxy arms, not only against Israel, against the United States, and do all kinds of damage. So there had to be a rationale. First, Hamas, Hezbollah, top leadership, finish their capacity to hit back, and then at that point, Iran has to face head-on whatever it is that they want to do, whatever they hate. And that's when you can have a direct invasion and engagement with the destruction of these facilities. Now again, you see very precise positioning against the nuclear program alone, not against the people, and not even against the leadership, political leadership as distinct from military leadership. The entire nuclear program and the military leadership which was backing and organizing the nuclear program. There has been a complete exclusive focus on this. Before that, though, Hamas and Hezbollah were not connected to the nuclear program, yet they needed to be eliminated. Now look at what has been happening in the last 1.5 years over Hamas and Hezbollah. Look at what triggered that to begin with, which was the Hamas attack in Israel. And you actually start seeing a pattern there. It's fascinating. I'm not going to say too much more, but you get the idea that this needed as if certain things to happen before this final action could take place. And at that point, 15 years of preparation in the United States with specialized weapons and their B-2 bombers is prepared and synchronized with Israel's timing. This synchronization again across militaries is a very big job. When finally the B-2 bombers came to bust the bunkers, they were accompanied by, say, various other fighter planes. So the US had at that point used more than 150 aircrafts, some for refueling the B-2 bombers, some for protecting them, and some for clearing the way in Iran itself. So when first these fighters went, they were meant to draw out any countermeasures. Nothing came. That's when the B-2 bombers could come in. Till then, B-2 bombers technically would be invisible. You don't know that they are there. When actually they start opening their bays to drop the bomb, suddenly they are exposed. That's when they give radar reflections. You can make out they are B-2 bombers. Again, there's a technology they use at that point, that they have a special pod that projects from the B-2 bomber that reflects radar waves in a particular way to simulate any other aircraft. So you have a stealth aircraft that is technically invisible. There's a pod which creates reflections which are similar to any aircraft that they want. So let's say you have certain fighters which were there, and the B-2 bomber could reveal itself as a fighter plane, be invisible or reveal itself as a fighter plane, and then open its base and drop something which is far beyond a fighter plane. So nothing in Iran had ever an inkling that this was about to happen now. So I said 6 bunker busters, but I spoke of 4th and 5th which complete the job. What is the 6th for? So the 6th was to make up for any one that might have missed or been ineffective. So there again there's a sequence. The B-2 bombers are coming in waves, one after the other, and the first one drops, let's say 2 of its bunker buster bombs, and then there has to be enough time for the explosion to end before the second one drops its bunker buster. So they were spaced out in timing. Each is monitoring for the result of what it bombs, and if it feels like something has been missed out, then they will reprogram the next bunker buster bomb to do a different task. So each of the bombs were timed to explode at a different depth. The first one on the surface, or as close to as deep as it could go from the surface. The second one at a much greater depth, and the third at still greater depth, until the last 2 would go into the underground facility itself. So you have to understand there's a 6th one which is waiting on the sidelines. In case one of these fails, this 6th would come forward, redo the task which was missed. So there's a real-time operation of monitoring the explosions, monitoring at what depth it's taking place, whether it's done the job that it was supposed to, and if it fails, you could reprogram the 6th one on the fly to take it the place of one which was missed. You must understand the enormous complexity involved in planning this while all these B-2 bombers are maintaining complete radio silence. It's amazing, and for this they must have had multiple practice sessions going back years. It's not something which you can say, hey, let's do this today, let's do it tomorrow. It's not going to happen like that. You have to practice it. You have to practice scenarios where some of the bombs fail, and then the 6th one is brought in, reprogrammed, and made to work correctly. And you reprogram on the fly while these aircrafts are up there. I'm going into some detail to give you an idea of the kind of complexity involved in the entire operation, but also the kind of monitoring which was required on the ground level to see what's happening each time the bomb strikes. It's not as if they come, bomb, go away, and then let's hope for the best, tomorrow we'll look at the satellite pictures. Everything is being monitored in real time. Now these are things which normally the army will never speak of, or the Air Force, the military will never speak of and say, hey, this is what we did. They won't go into that kind of detail. What details they have given is already quite a bit, and it was because the media provoked it by literally trying to show as if nothing had happened. But they revealed quite a bit. What I'm giving is then implications of this. They said, okay, the 6th one was programmable. I'm showing you what it involves to reprogram it, and how they would have to be monitoring each bomb that struck to see whether it struck correctly at the correct depth and did the necessary damage for the next one to do its job. And just with that, you can imagine how many practice sessions they would have had for training for each of these possibilities that something might go wrong, and each of the things which could go wrong. Imagine then the years of practice which would have been going on within the United States, within their particular testing ranges. I don't remember, in the desert of New Mexico, that they have their testing grounds. And all these would have been going on for years, preparing for this one day. And on the day on which it's decided that it's going to happen, the pilots of the aircraft would not know which day it is. They leave home, they say goodbye to their family, they go to their Air Force base, and they are just assigned a job. Now go there, take the aircraft. It might be for them as if a routine mission, testing, practice session. Once they are in the aircraft and airborne, they get the information, this is the live thing. So that they cannot, by mistake, leak to the family. If they say, hey, I will see you after 48 hours, you have already leaked out something. And there are all kinds of monitoring systems precisely to watch for such things. So they themselves would not know. They are airborne and then they are told, hey, this is the real thing. It's live. And then they fly 37 hours was the total round trip. Two of them, they sleep, eat, they have toilets inside the aircraft. It's one of the most amazing aircrafts, costing $2 billion each. But as an aircraft, it's one of the most amazing. Now, there's a side to this aircraft which is not popularly known, and again, the military keeps wraps around it, is that the aircraft itself has very advanced technologies, and there is enough evidence to indicate they have also anti-gravitic technologies. So they not only go into stealth mode, but when they switch on their anti-gravitic technology, at that point they're flying not with conventional exhausts, but with anti-gravity propulsion. And at that point they can stay for a very long time in the air at very great heights and be completely invisible to any kind of detection. It would need some very advanced technologies for monitoring, if at all it could be done. I do not know. They have also, by the way, for some of their, I don't remember, I sometimes confuse these numbers, the F series of fighters in the most advanced among them, that they have some of these anti-gravitic technologies. But these are so super secret that we are not normally given any idea of what is possible even with those technologies. But a few leaks have taken place, and I'll give the example of one which is documented by one of the whistleblowers that Stephen Greer has documented. And this was a person who was going in the forest in a completely secluded place, and in the complete silence of the forest, where for miles around there's nobody in the United States, he comes to a clearing and he sees a tree there. And next to the tree is this, I don't remember, it was F-16 or one of the advanced variants, a plane floating near the tree and moving like this around it as if doing circles with the engines off. It was in anti-gravitic mode. And the pilot was having a good time in a place where he assumed nobody would be seeing, in the middle of nowhere. And at some point, this person comes into the clearing, the fighter pilot notices that someone has seen, and immediately he ignites the engines and it goes off in a conventional propulsion system. This is just one event, and that's enough already to reveal to you why some of these aircrafts are so expensive. It's not just that they have the special features for being invisible to radar, they also have these advanced technologies. So a lot of the media response in the United States, you must understand, is so strange. The same media which celebrated Biden sending more and more missiles to Ukraine was upset that Trump was backing Israel's attack in Iran. The same advisors to Biden who kept saying you have to send more weapons, now we're saying this is a pointless attack. It is a pointless war. They should not get involved in the Middle East. Interesting. And then something else which was quite fascinating. When Trump finally did the bombing, they said this is the most dangerous act. Others said it is, and these are all supposed to be experts from the Biden administration or Obama administration, they are commentators or military specialists who said that Trump went in without a plan, that he was hitting in the dark, he was taking a chance, and we don't know what will happen. It might worsen things, it might create worse responses. And the media was flooded with headlines of this kind. If you are a casual reader, the impression it creates in you is of someone taking a chance. And I'm giving you all this detail of the background for you to appreciate that there is no chance involved. There is precision planning to the tiniest detail going back 15 years. And in teamwork with Israel, but also completely isolated from Israel and the entire military, in the most advanced training involved, in the most advanced equipment involved, in the most advanced bunker busters, specialized bunker buster bombs involved, which have trained for this one day, for this one event, to end the nuclear program in Iran. And this goes back such a long time. The time was now. The timing and the planning and the plan B and plan C, etc., are all worked out. I'll give an example of what kind of plan B, plan C would be involved in this case. So first attempt was from Israel to clean up things. It could not because bunker busters they lacked. That's when the US came in. At every step, Trump gave a chance for the Iran leadership to say, all right, you surrender the entire nuclear program. They never asked for surrender of the country. They said surrender and end the nuclear program. That's all that they asked, or Trump asked. When they refused, next step. Again, they were given a chance. When they refused, next step. Now, what is interesting is at this last stage, when the bombing was completed, the destruction was so thorough, and as I said, it was monitored in real time. Each bomb prepared only after the first one has done prior one has done its work, that already in the monitoring facilities in the United States at the presidential level and the highest level of military, they knew that the target has been completed, achieved. So when Trump came out with the statement that Iranian facilities have been obliterated, the media which is against him, just wanting to embarrass him and somehow back the Iranian program for reasons which you have to really question, came out with all these stories saying, how can he know? And what they did was, they took a satellite picture. Satellite picture shows one little hole and the entire surface blackened out. What's inside the hole? How deep does it go? What's the explosion taken inside? Obviously, satellite picture cannot say. Even if you did a chat GPT and analysis on the picture, it said from the picture from satellite, you cannot know how deep the bunker buster has gone and how much destruction it has created. It's common sense. But all these media were doing analysis saying that, look, nothing has changed, the mountain is as it is. The destruction is inside. Precisely the mountain is as it is because all the subsequent bombs went deeper and deeper inside. There was practically no explosion on the surface. That means they completed their mission at the required depth. Isn't it? This is common sense. But the media spun it in a way as if to question, ridicule, or create doubt in the public against Trump. As if he's haphazard, as if there was no planning, this is a gamble, it might work, it might not, it might create worse problems, and so on. Which is not the case at all. That's why I went into such a length to show you what's behind it. And then they came out with, it's amazing to see in the news with the interaction that the Trump government had and the military leadership had with the news organizations, they came out with such hostility. So the head of the US military was challenged by one of these, I don't remember, CNN or one of these, saying, are you under pressure to declare that the bombing was successful? Now, when you're asked a question like that, it's one of those what are called gotcha questions. So it's the common example is giving, have you stopped beating your wife? If you say yes, that means you were beating. If you say no, that means you are beating. So are you under pressure? If you say yes or no, either way, it's as if there is an implicit pressure. And there are many such gotcha. They're all specialized in these what are called gotcha questions. To show Trump in bad light. Are you under pressure of Trump? And I saw one of these reports which said, well, he denied that he's under pressure. He said that he is acting independently of Trump. But obviously Trump was watching because within an hour, Trump posted such and such a thing on the Truth Social. He was listening to his boss. He was afraid of his boss. All this is construction of the media. Now, if you're not careful when you read the media, you will get a suggestion and it's implicit. It creates an image that you are not conscious of. It is subliminal. You're programmed to think of a tension internally and a cover-up and an attempted cover-up and Trump being bumbling or uncertain or dominating or proud or egoistic or megalomaniac, whatever the impression they're trying to form. And it's all media manipulation. Media lies. That's why I give you one link, which is the one where you find all the technical details, the closest that I could get. None of this you'll find in mainstream media. You'll find fragments, little fragments. They will say, something, it was the largest explosion. One of the pilots said it's the brightest explosion I've seen in my life. Okay, but that's nothing compared to all the rest which is involved, you see. And this kind of precision bombing, in one single hole, all of them have gone through at the proper depths. And it's a little more complex because there were multiple directions of passages for the exhaust. So they had to have one bomb go this way, another bomb go that way for the different paths. And all this was built on the precise plans. All this attack was designed on the precise plans that they had of the entire facility. What an intelligence, first of all, achievement. What a technical achievement. And then what an operational achievement. It's amazing, mind-blowing. And the precision with zero loss, zero errors, zero mistakes. It's something to be, it's never been done before in military history. So it's one of the historic occasions. And this kind of bomb has never been used actually in current, in recent warfare at least, and with this kind of precision. So there were in all 14 bombs. We have used up 12 here just for this one major facility. What about the other two? They were used up on two other facilities which were already largely destroyed by the Israeli bombing earlier. And they put also the bunker buster bomb. Those were not as fortified. They were not inside the mountain as this particular facility was. The name of the facility, Fordo, I think. Fordo. And the particular site I have given you also has the satellite images, and you can see what's involved. It's amazing to see the precision with which the missiles have been hitting. In one particular case, I think they gave a precision of 12 inches off from its designated marker. Now, a lot of this was also monitored on the ground. So while all this is happening, there are also commandos on the ground monitoring by various means. There are drones monitoring and there are satellites monitoring. And then they have what are called the internal communications within Iran that are being monitored. All of those give you information about what's happening. Obviously, not all this will be revealed even by the president. He is very much involved in whatever is needed to be held back. And so the media can raise questions, and even in the media reports, the later reports where they said, oh, CIA has come and said, yes, the facility is destroyed. The report still said, but they don't answer questions. What questions? And they make up some new questions. They didn't answer those questions. But those questions were never raised. You just created them now. That's the kind of hostility and deception that the US media was involved in. Isn't that disturbing? You saw in India, for example, when the Indian army has done something good and the Indian media turns against the Indian army or questions it, there is hostility from the people who say, you don't do that. So it happened, for example, in the Indian case, Pakistan declared suddenly that 5 Indian aircrafts had been shot down by Pakistan. And there's one newspaper called The Hindu. It's not Hindu at all. It is a leftist journal. They call themselves Hindu as a cover story. And it came out with a photograph of supposedly a part of the plane that had been crashed within India, and standing by the story of 5 aircraft shot down. This was picked up by China, and the Chinese state media then projected saying Indian newspapers have reported that Pakistan shot down 5 aircrafts. Until somebody pointed out that the piece of metal that they had photographed was not a part of an aircraft. It was one of the booster tanks, which is used for extra fuel and is dropped halfway when the tank is empty. And that had dropped somewhere, and the photograph of that was pushed as an aircraft crash. When someone pointed that out in public, then they withdrew that notice without apology. They withdrew that story. By then, China had picked up, Europe had picked up these stories, now quoting Indian media against Indian army. But there was a strong reaction from the Indian public. You don't see that in the US public. That to me is troubling. It also shows, for example, in India, there were other media which criticized this or reported positively. In the US, the majority of the media is anti-Trump and anti the entire operation. That tells you how deep-rooted the control on the media is. We have spoken of this before in one of the early sessions of the series of current affairs, and I had spoken of Operation Mockingbird, under which in 1992 the CIA chief had declared in the US Congress that at that point they had the ability to control some 95% of US media and some 85% of global media. They could insert any story, remove any story, or spin any story. Spin meaning twist it around, a positive to be made negative, a negative to be made positive. And that was 1992. Imagine what happens from that point till now, an entire 35 years nearly later. The kind of control that they have. And it is exactly the same media which was critical of India and tried to prove that India lost and Pakistan won in the altercation or war, and the same media which is trying to prove that Iran actually won and destroyed more of Israel than Israel could destroy of Iran. Yes, of course, Israel suffered setbacks. Yes, of course, it's a small country. If you overwhelm it with enough missiles, even with their Iron Dome, some will get through. And when they do get through, well, there is destruction. Iran targeted civilian facilities in Israel. Israel targeted only military facilities and, of course, the nuclear scientists in Iran. Again, that shows you the difference of priorities. So I'm giving you this background so that you may appreciate what went through in this program. I'm just going to look at the chat box. So Light is asking about innocent kids in Gaza. The whole problem we have discussed before, it's in any warfare, there will be what is called collateral damage. And especially in asymmetrical warfare, one side is stronger than the other, the weaker side, and especially if they have a propaganda objective, will put their missiles in the middle of schools. For example, the Hamas headquarters was next to a United Nations school. So when Israel does a pinpoint explosion on Hamas headquarters, which was inside a bunker, it will damage the school and kill children. But it's not as if they're aiming to kill children. That's the collateral. On the other hand, on the Hamas side, and you will see these videos which are online, and I've seen videos, where they're sending the children with something to go to the Israeli soldiers with a threatening move as if to bomb them, so that the soldiers may shoot back, and while they're recording the children doing this. They're showing children throwing stones, spinning and throwing across the wall to try to hit Israeli people and calling upon the Israeli soldiers, shoot him, and they're there with the video recording. That to me is a perversion, and you see that a lot within the Gaza space. I'm not saying everyone is doing that, but there are those who do that. So there's a fundamental difference in approach and in priorities. So yes, it's not as if Israel is aiming to hit innocent children. That's one of the collateral damages. And unlike the attack by the Hamas, which is aiming to hit children, which is aiming to hit families, which is aiming at soft targets. It's the same story I mentioned last time when Iranian head actually asked for attacks on civilians. So we have to understand that it's not quite the same thing, and you cannot just say because a few children died in a missile attack that they were targeted deliberately, at least from Israel's side. It may be true on the other side though. So yes, now Manoj has raised this question about the media, Western media, saying that Iran moved the enriched uranium in several trucks and the bombing was after they were removed. Now this is the part where I would assume that if this movement was taking place, it would be monitored by satellites because they knew these trucks were there. If they were taking out enriched uranium, then they would be tracking where it went. Let's assume, okay, this is very simple common sense. So obviously the truck were photographed. If they're taking out enriched uranium, you follow them, see where they go. In this particular case, and here I would rather trust Trump. Trump said very clearly, those trucks were not there to take away enriched uranium. They were bringing in cement because they were trying to cover these exit points for the airflow. Now, if Trump says this specifically, I would rather believe him because his information is coming from the US military monitoring the trucks. Now, monitoring trucks is easy. As I said, first of all, through satellites, you can see what they're doing, what are they carrying. Even if they're covered up, at some point, something has to come out. So are they being loaded or are they being unloaded? It's obvious what's happening. Second, when those trucks return to wherever it is, military base or civilian base, depending on what they were using, at that point again, you can have human intel, which tells you what's happening. And then you have people in the base, because if you're going to take uranium, you can't just carry it in the open. This is Very dangerous, very risky. You have special facilities for radioactive protection. You take into facilities where you can be protected from radiation. So the whole operation will be of a completely different kind. One can assume, of course, that the uranium they had purified was scattered in different locations and that Israel did not have the specific knowledge. That's possible. But the story about the trucks taking the uranium out is a bit foolish. So I would completely discount it. But, and this is the part where I would assume something else altogether. When Trump said 2 weeks, aligning with the intelligence information that Iran was ready to make a bomb in 2 weeks, I'm assuming that quite a bit of the fissile material had been gathered for this purpose. And if it had been gathered, the only place it would be gathered will be this specialized facility, which is in Fordo. And if it happens in Fordo, then whatever the missiles took out would have buried it. Now again, we have to be very careful. The goal is not to destroy the purified uranium. That's dangerous. If you put an explosion on top of the uranium storage facility, you're going to release that uranium out in the air. That would be a disaster worse than a nuclear reactor meltdown. It would be a dirty bomb which would destroy life in Iran. You don't want to do that. So if anything, you want to bomb the facility in a way that the system caves in, and if there's uranium, enriched uranium stored, it gets covered up. It's no more accessible. That would be the way forward. Or perhaps, if some of it is stored in other facilities, there might be other kinds of interventions there or not. I don't know. The key point though, and this is the most important thing, the objective of this entire operation was not to remove that enriched uranium, it is to prevent further enrichment, and it is to remove the ability to create a nuclear bomb permanently. To that objective, it was 100% successful. So the whole media distracting you with trucks or with stories of, but the uranium is still out there somewhere, is pointless. And they're missing the objective of the mission. The light is saying Iran has proxies in Palestine and Lebanon, but US has proxies in Ukraine, Israel, Syria, Libya, etc. Yes, true. And that's one of the things which you see today is many countries have allied themselves in various ways. We're going to read something from Sri Aurobindo shortly about the shift in alliances. It's something very important. And all depends on the nature of the alliance and alliance to what. So I take the example of Pakistan. Pakistan for a long time was the hotbed for the cabal in the United States military and in the CIA. So they were the bad guys who had built up the facility, and it was said at that point the biggest CIA station outside the United States was in Pakistan. And it corrupted the Pakistani military from inside out for various objectives. So what's the relationship? If you look at Saudi Arabia today, it's quite independent, but it has an alliance with the US. Today's Saudi Arabia is different from Saudi Arabia of, let's say, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Saudi Arabia was a hotbed for the most extremist form of Islam and training people even in certain kinds of extreme form of suicide attacks. Completely replaced when Mohammed bin Salman took charge. He eliminated the people who were involved in that, and others were put in jail. About 200 people of the royal family were jailed at that point. That whole coup which took place was largely covered by the mainstream media. I've spoken about it before, so I won't go into detail. Those who are interested, you could go back to that discussion. Today's relationship of Saudi Arabia with the US is completely different. And they're partners for something positive, at least in the relation that they have with Trump. They may not have the same relation with Biden or Obama or others, but with Trump they have that positive relation. So you have to really look at these things in the changed scenario, particularly after Trump has come to power and the shifts that have taken place. So A is saying, it is said that Hamas and Hezbollah were funded by Iran for terror activities. Who funded Iran? Previous US regimes. Was this why Mar-a-Lago was raided by Biden DOJ to stop Trump from stopping Iran? Yes, kind of. So As I mentioned earlier, under Obama, a large amount of funding went to the Middle East, which actually created at that point, the ISIS. It was created under Obama. Now, you may say by Obama. I've given enough information in the previous discussion on this topic where it shows that Obama was very much in the know, because every time that they had a high value target and they were about to shoot them with a drone, the specific requirement from Obama administration was they had to get clearance from White House. So it would go up the chain all the way to the White House. There would be a delay. By the time the response came, okay, you can go ahead and shoot, the person who they had targeted had vanished. And it happened again and again and again. So it almost suggested as if from the highest levels there was a back connection to the ISIS elite by which they were warning them to move off. And again, we look at the big picture. The two people who were heading ISIS had been in Guantanamo Bay under CIA control for years before. They were released, they go to Iraq, they take the Iraqi army trained by the United States, they take the equipment left behind by the US Army, including guns, tanks, vehicles, left behind when the US Army withdraws, by order. They take over all that and become ISIS overnight. Now, this cannot happen except by deliberate intentional planning. The same thing which you saw happening in Afghanistan under Biden, when Biden did a hasty withdrawal in which they left behind all the equipment, if I remember right, some 60 billion worth of equipment, including advanced missiles and advanced helicopters, including these very advanced stealth helicopters. They left it all behind to the people whom they had trained, but now headed by a different Taliban group. And so they were creating as if the new Taliban and equipping them. So yes, this has been done prior times. Iran was funded in various ways by what I have called cabal before. What form it takes, whether through the US or through European governments or through, at that point, North Korea or through Pakistan, or completely different means, we don't know. That's not important. You have to understand what it's aligned to. And remember, this is just that elite cabal interest sitting on top of the people of Persia. So Light is saying that US stopped and got into Iran because Iran was successful in penetrating the Iron Dome. No, not true. Not true. Because the Iron Dome had a failure rate of 10% even from before. And Iran was able to get through. But as I pointed out, in the very first wave of Israeli attack, Iran's countermeasures had been so badly decimated that what they actually put out in their missiles were 1/5. I believe, my numbers are vague now, but out of 1,000, they could put out only 200 missiles or something like that. It was about 1/5. And that itself was surprising at that point, the counter. Oh, I have to come to the last part. So after this bombing by Trump with the bunker buster bombs, the next day, Iran had to make a counter. This is very important to understand the psychology, and when we come to Sri Aurobindo's text. So the next day, Iran announces we are going to hit back with an exact same number of bombs. So US dropped 14 bombs. We're going to hit back at a US base in Qatar with 14 missiles. So what do? They call up Qatar. Hey, by the way, we are going to attack you now. We are going to attack the US base with 14 bombs. Please inform the US president also. 14 missiles. So Qatar informs US president. Is it okay? They say yes, please go ahead. And then Iran sends 14 missiles to the US base, which the US had evacuated. They left behind minimum number of people just to knock down. They knocked out all 14 missiles, and that was it. Iran went silent, US went silent. And Trump insisted that he has brokered peace, no more war, no more fighting by both. Apparently, Trump said Iran sent 52 planes to bomb Iran more. And Trump ordered Israel to pull back 52 planes. I'm assuming it is true, because if Trump says it, normally he will not tell lies. He may exaggerate in a dramatize in a way, but not on facts. So And then he insists that there is peace now, no more fighting. Why is this so important? You see, Israel as a civilizational honor and sense, has a civilizational sense of honor and self-respect, it had to do a counter. But it did not want the war to proceed. So it made a counter in name only. By first informing, and Trump said, they took our permission. They said, we're going to send 14 missiles. Is it okay? And we said, yes. And then they sent 14 missiles, but it stops there. So they had to have, so to say, the last action, parting shots, and then silence. So you have to understand, there's a lot of propaganda. Don't believe everything you read. Understand the nuances which go behind this. And it has stopped. That itself tells you a lot. Okay, Rajesh is asking something important. Could you explain why it is strategically necessary to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon? It seems in practice the weapon's power itself deters its actual use. Yes, true. There's a greater complication though. Understand that Iran at this point is ruled by this elite guard. The people who control the elite guard are part of the global cabal. Even the mullah who's sitting on top, whatever may be his ideology and his declared hate, in itself would have no capacity or competence to do what this elite guard is doing. And this elite guard is trained and controlled by what I have earlier referred to as the cabal, which is rooted also within the core of the CIA. So it's the same group which is sitting inside Pakistan at the core, sitting in Iran at the core, was sitting earlier in North Korea at the core, controlling the mechanism of governance, owning it basically. So Iran, in Pakistan, the civilian governance has no meaning. It's the military which controls. The same situation had been created in Iran, and they, using this basically with the backing of the cabal, were creating endless wars in the Middle East. If you can eliminate this top leadership, there is no more interest in Iran to have a war. Even if there is the ideology which says, oh, we hate, there is not the competence nor the energy to be able to execute that. It is this group which is doing it. Which is the reason why Trump insisted that the leadership, political leadership, should not be touched. But this leadership is eliminated. But we're coming to something more. It has been in the Middle East for a long time, this claim from this group that they would create what was called the Islamic bomb. In the earlier mode, it was Saudi Arabia funding Pakistan, which was working in cahoots with North Korea to create what would be the Islamic bomb. But because the US CIA was involved there, from the point the bomb was created, the US ensured that it held control in some form or other. But still, technically, it was viewed by Saudi Arabia as their bomb because they had funded its development. This is the old Saudi Arabia, not today's Saudi Arabia. When that could not be accessed, Iran became the next front for this. The advantage with Iran was that the good side of the US government could not put controls if Iran developed the same bomb. So from Pakistan to Iran, there were connections. They were leaking facilities, secrets, equipment onto Iran. And from other sources also, from North Korea, they were getting materials. And once this was completed, the goal there was to create perpetual wars by various kinds. So one of these was, which they had tried earlier through Syria, to create a bomb which they would bomb in the United States or in Israel, or make it seem as if it was a Russian attack when in fact it was coming from somewhere else. A lot of these possibilities were in the play in their intentions. The idea was to push the word towards unending wars. You see the situation the Middle East was before Trump came to power in the previous election. And what happened after he came to power? He ended ISIS. It's something like this. If Iran's nuclear bomb can be eliminated to the extent it has been done, so that there's no more a nuclear bomb there, the Middle East goes into peace for a long time to come. If it cannot be eliminated, then Middle East becomes the focal point for various other things. So there's a larger picture involved which has to do with larger global politics of the cabal and cabal controls. And that's the reason why this particular intervention was so critical. I'm convinced, and we will see that shortly in the next few months, that when this top leadership is replaced, assuming now that the mullahs agree to eliminate completely their nuclear weapons, there will be a regime change. So I'm coming to a different aspect of the discussion. So there was a plan B and there was a plan C also. If for whatever reason the mullahs do not concede, regime change will be enforced. You see, Trump keeps saying, well, that can happen if it's necessary, but I would rather it doesn't happen. Okay, what's he saying? He's saying that we'll make it happen if required. Meanwhile, you better make peace, otherwise we'll make it happen. When they do make it happen, the regime change will still happen, but in a different way. Perhaps more spontaneous, but it will still be backed by external interests. And in this case, because the regime change they want to push is for peace. This is what happened in Ukraine. The regime change which was created there was meant for war. And so you had the unending war which you have seen now. The regime change for peace means you will have unending peace, at least as long as that group stays largely in control. And I believe once you're able to make that transition and the people want it, after that it's very difficult to reverse, except by some major assassination. And this is the direction that Trump's global strategy is for. So there was a point last time, and we didn't have enough time to answer in detail, but Narad had raised this question, which others also later have raised, that under Trump you're still seeing wars. Yes, but see what he's doing, he's ending the wars, and some of them are taking longer to end. Ukraine war has taken longer to end, but it will end, and his entire effort is to stop it, as it is with this whole struggle with Israel. His backing for Israel has made a crucial difference. Hamas is out, for example, and the other Hezbollah is out. They're finished. They will never be able to bounce back to what they were because of Trump backing Israel at this point. And Iran is the last step. It's not actually last. Last will be Pakistan. But Iran is the most significant step, let's say. After this, the entire Middle East goes quiet. Hopefully then people can live happily. What Trump is also doing parallelly now, you will recall my mention of the Abraham Accords, where he got 5 countries to sign up with Israel to make peace and actually to have visa-free travel between them, Muslim countries. He's expanding the Abraham Accords. Other countries in the Middle East are being brought in. So all of these agree to be friends with Israel and have visa-free exchange between them. No more of the terrorism, no more of this extremist hatred. Iran being the last remnant, hopefully this being completed now. After that, the only thing that remains is Pakistan. And for which we have to really see how the game is played out. That critical meeting that we mentioned last time of Pakistani army chief having lunch with Trump is significantly connected with all these changes taking place. If he is on the good side, then he'll be allowed while this change takes place. If he stays on the bad side, Trump would have warned him, you either align with our objectives of ending this or not. And then you have consequences. So he's been given a warning, and we will see the results very soon. So Alight is saying that people think Supreme Leader of Iran is a madman, but Iran has never attacked anyone in the past. Yes, you see, you have to understand the difference between the people of Iran, the civilization of Iran, and this elite cabal group. The cabal group will do anything. You see a lot of this pattern in Gaddafi in Libya. For a long time, the West presented him as a madman. He was not. But as long as he was threatening war, it was useful. But it was the cabal which was presenting him as a madman. Once he realized the nature of the game, he actually eschewed having a nuclear bomb. He gave up war and officially made peace with the West, dedicated the same financial resources to rebuilding his country. When he started doing that, and he made it a model for Africa, that's when they had to topple him. So there is this play for sure, that when somebody does not align with the cabal, they is presented as mad. Just as Trump is being promoted as impulsive and egoistic, etc. But that's because you're not allied to cabal. You have to understand how the media plays, distrust the media. And when you see the entire media ganging up against someone, you can be sure that that person is trying to do some good. Iran is the reverse. The entire media has been backing the Iranian leadership, mainstream media. And then you know that they are not, they represent cabal interests. One of the things which you see also there, when some of the top leadership of Iran was eliminated, or the top leadership of ISIS was eliminated, you had New York Times, Washington Post, US's most reputed, so to say, newspapers, writing eulogies in praise of those terrorists, presenting them as some kind of great leaders. And the same happening with Iran. And then you have to really wonder which side are they on and what that person actually represents. So it's kind of inversion of thinking in various ways when you look at mainstream media's behavior. So Aspirer says, I think hating US has become a fad nowadays. Yes, they are racist, and many of the acerbic actions take place at global scale from there. And it happens from Europe also, but I don't understand why nobody criticizes Europe, but the amount of work happening for light there is also there in the US. So don't blindly hate. Yes, you have to understand, always make the difference between people, genuine government, and then the cabal interests. If you take it as a pyramid, the largest number is the people who are like sheep. Then there is the government, in which there are interests of various kind. We call the deep state generally is the term we would use, because they're entrenched interests. And sometimes they are for good, bad. Mostly it's about interest. They don't think of good or bad. Then you go to the apex of that negative pyramid, and that's where the cabal is sitting, which is using all these interests. They try to sway the sheep. They try to use the deep state, manipulate them for their, I have used the phrase earlier, satanic interests, asuric interests. So you have to be very careful about distinguishing these three. And these three layers exist everywhere, no exception. What you see, and the point about US being criticized and as the source of so much confusion in the world, used to be true in the past. When a lot of the US decisions, and particularly military interventions, were for cabal interests, they would overthrow good leaders and put puppets instead for US interest control or cabal control, whatever it was. That whole thing has changed under Trump, which is the reason why the media is so against him. But under Trump, there's actually a complete reversal of US policies, but the machinery has not gone. So where it was cabal controlling, now you have Trump and a group which is controlling, at least in the civilian side of things. But you still have entrenched interests. You still have cabal hooks inside the machinery who are countering Trump at each step. So this counter, there's a very difficult game that Trump is playing right now, where the cabal interests within the entrenched US interests are against him and blocking every move that he makes. This is a theme I'm keeping for next time, perhaps in elaboration, if we have time to complete our topic today. But be very careful, don't just blacken an entire country or leadership in one go like this, saying, oh, it's the US, oh, it's X government. Always understand that there are these three layers, and then there are complexities within those also. And the same you will see with Israel. You will see a lot of material out there where they blame Israel or they criticize Israel for various things. It's not so simple. And I pointed out the same three-layer structure exists within Israel and even within the military. And look at that discussion we had about the attack on the USS Liberty and understand how it works even inside Israel and within their intelligence agencies. There are the good guys and then there are the cabal interests. Trinetri is asking, does India have any secret underground effort to develop anti-gravity or free energy technology? So simple answer, I would say, I don't know. If they have, it would be difficult for us to know because it would be very secret. Does India have psychic remote viewing initiatives? Again, I don't know. But my simple answer to both these questions would be, I doubt it. And I'll tell you why. For a long time, I was exploring the old literature of Vimanas. Vimana is the aircrafts described in ancient Sanskrit literature. Now, this is not fantasy. In the Mahabharata war, you have flying machines. Subsequent stories, you have flying machines. There's a text that goes back to some 1200 years, which is a manual of warfare in which there are 4 verses which describe flying machines and using mercury to fly by releasing anti-gravitic forces using mercury. So there is a documentation of a technology which is largely secret, mercury based. During the Nazi era, during the Second World War, there were many of these who came to India and took back with them scholars of Sanskrit with these texts to try to replicate certain of these descriptions. So I had studied the actual original Sanskrit text to try to gain some insight of the nature of anti-gravity, etc., which later I acquired much more directly by other means, which today are available already. I have spoken about it in passing earlier. But at that time, now going back 30 years, there were 2 people who had approached me because they had heard from somebody that I was doing the study and they wanted some evidence, and they were connected with one of the Indian aeronautical companies, and they had been assigned to explore this text to see if there was any technological insight that they could use for purpose. What I saw in interaction with them was they were open-minded but broadly skeptical of finding anything useful, and it ended there. So as far as I understand, there has been no serious effort to go deep enough because most people do not understand the technology described. And if at all such a thing takes off eventually in India, I believe I'm in the circuit close enough with other people who have this knowledge to hear something about it. I don't think it has happened. It may happen in other ways, and that may be more through the modern technology and other insights by which this may still happen. But unfortunately, if you look at the big picture of India, the governments before Modi were not even interested in strengthening the military. So much less going into old ancient texts to try to recover knowledge from those domains. Unfortunately, that has shifted. Now Modi is interested, but it's going more with conventional knowledge, conventional information technologies. I am going to go down. Okay, so I'm going to skip what is in the chat box. There's quite a few more things. I want to stay with the topic for today, which is very important. So before proceeding, I'll just complete what we had to say about this last intervention that took place in Iran. Remember, the media lied again and again, simply to discredit Trump or to create doubts about him, to create an image around him, and somehow to promote the idea that it is all wrong and Iran should not be touched, and just to create a public perception. But the question was, how did Trump know? And I have partly answered that because the nature of the strike itself involved continual, real, live monitoring, plus other means which were on the ground as well as the internal communications of Iran. These they cannot speak of openly. So when media challenges them saying, hey, show us evidence, it is intentionally done because they know that the government will not come out. They'll just say, look, this is classified. So then the media will say, Trump claimed without evidence. Watch that phrase. Whenever you see that, know that there is an agenda there. The hostility of the media is also quite shocking. Makes you question. One point I wanted to highlight, Trump's negotiating skills. The way he's handled the whole affair, the way he's negotiated with Israel, with Iran, and still kept the communications open. Next week, they are supposed to have another discussion. There will be some symbolic criticism from Iran, but they will negotiate. And this is the interesting thing. How Trump has managed that and the level at which he's engaging with people is unprecedented in modern politics, going back the last 100 years at least, maybe more. Why? What is the big difference he makes? Look at the majority of politicians across the board, across the countries around the world. They all come either from some entitled lineage very wealthy, so they never know ground level reality of people, or they are already embedded with their interests, or they are grassroots activists of the leftist kind who have a leftist agenda. They, so to say, promise freebies and come to power, but they're not practical. They have never built wealth. They have never led in any meaningful way in leadership, whether in industry, in business, rarely in military though. You do have military heads, but that is a different category. But they have not negotiated. Militaries are not designed for negotiation. They're designed for implementation and blind execution. Stiff hierarchies. Trump is the first politician who comes from the background of successful business, of having been built literally everything from scratch. Power of negotiation sustained over decades and proved across international boundaries. And every time he has won, but he has won not at the expense of the other, by creating a win-win situation. And that's the beauty of his negotiation as a businessman. The other side never comes away saying, oh, we got cheated. Even when he tried something, there was a university he tried which failed. He made sure everybody who had invested or who had signed up for it got back their money with benefits. Nobody went away saying that I got cheated. Media will spin around and say, oh, that failed. But look at the people, nobody comes back saying, oh, I got cheated or I lost money. He paid back everybody. And where he succeeded, both sides benefited. So what is interesting to see is that in business, he has no enemies. All are his partners, and all his prior clients and partners are praising him to this day. This is unique. You don't even see that in some of the big businesses in the West. In India, we have a few. They are not Reliance, which always you'll find the people they have used hate them. They've destroyed small companies to build their big entity. So they're very much aligned to the kind of deep state mentality. At least it was so. Maybe it has changed. I do not know now. But Tatas, for example, have this reputation that they make these win-win relationships. But unlike Trump, they have not made these dramatic breakthroughs. They've stayed within a steady, stable business. So Trump comes with a background which is exceptional. And now he's using that skill of win-win, positive relations, building together in the domain of politics. This is unprecedented. And if you watch his negotiating skills, do not trust the media. Go to the original messages, what he posts, or those who are favorable to him. If you really want to understand US politics from the Trump's perspective, one of the best websites I have recommended is The Gateway Pundit. Take a look at that. Watch that really. They have a lot of other things, but they will always explain to you that particular angle and reveal where the other side is going wrong from the Trump MAGA agenda, Make America Great agenda. What is beautiful about this particular negotiation is Trump says, make America great again, and then he says, make Iran great again. So he's actually saying that while negotiating with the Iranian leadership, that I want you to make Iran great again, for which get rid of your nuclear weapons and build your country, not nuclear weapons. So he's ready to engage to build Iran in a healthy way. And he's coming with a lot of positivity. So it's something quite remarkable. And I think you will see in the next few weeks that unfold, whether there's regime change or not, you will see the negotiation itself should be very interesting. And then one last comment I wanted to make about, we got this news item which said that the Indian Navy was ready to launch BrahMos missiles to eliminate the entire Pakistani Navy. That's when the Indian government, Modi, accepted to ceasefire. In my opinion, and it's a personal opinion still, before ceasefire, they should have eliminated the bulk of the threat and capability of Pakistan to use nuclear weapons, their entire missile facilities, etc. They should have done that. And then said, okay, now it stops. The way Trump has done, complete the job and then say, okay, let's make peace now. From this point on, no more of this nonsense. Modi has come out saying we will not allow you to blackmail us with nuclear weapons after having destroyed the command headquarters, but not the entire facilities. It should have taken further. I believe so. It's a personal opinion. So why is this important? And I'm ending with this part because from here on, the nature of warfare changes. What we saw, we touched upon it last time, how Ukraine sent drones within deep inside Russia. Israel sent drones deep inside Iran. When Iran began to counter in a conventional way, the drones eliminated the conventional capability before they could be used. This is going to be the nature of future warfare, and it will be equally from Pakistan. From this point on, from the moment there is a turn to any response, the drones will be there first from a local space that you can never defend from. So the nature of warfare just on the drone basis has changed because your enemy is sitting inside your own home, hidden within 100 meters from you perhaps, and you will not know until he pops out from somewhere and attacks. So this has radically shifted the nature of warfare. I mentioned last time China has brought up huge agricultural land near to US air bases and military bases. Why? First of all, to monitor. Second, for such counterattacks. But there are other things which have happened. So one of the big things today is AI. Everybody says AI is a game changer. Yes, artificial intelligence has changed. But in my opinion, the drone warfare is more significant than AI. AI is making the drone warfare more effective. But in itself, AI without the shift in drones would have been not as dramatic a change. But once you recognize drones can be sitting anywhere, and I'm going to give examples of how that will be. Plus, equipped with AI, you have absolutely no way to defend yourself. Let me give you a few examples. If you travel the length of any country, India, USA, Russia, Europe, you will see across fields these gigantic towers of high voltage cables linking power stations to entire cities. For example, these wires going across one big chain at 22,000 volts, 44,000 volts AC, they are carrying the bulk of the power to run an entire city. And then you have the local substations, and then various substations at different locations. All these are left unprotected. So let's just take this big tower with the wires going. It has four legs on the ground. You can walk up to those four legs, put a tiny little piece of putty, which is an explosive, C4 explosive with a timer, stick it on, walk away and blow it. The entire thing comes down, power cut. So the worst case scenario, they come back, set it up again. But what if you blow up 10 towers in one go? It'll take, let's say, a few days to recover. Now go to the substation. The substation where that 44,000 volts is converted to 220 volts. There you have transformers. These are very specialized. In the United States, the transformers are typically 40 to 50 years old. The companies which manufacture those transformers are no more in existence. They actually buy them from China now. Now you put a little putty of C4 on the transformer. As I said, these are unprotected. At best, you have a little wire fence around it. Well, send it with a drone then. Put a little putty of C4 on a drone. It goes to the transformer and blows it. Drone is a little big, this size. Send out 500 drones to blow up 500 transformers, just like that. What happens? The entire country's grid collapses. What happened recently in Spain because of misalignment of grid timings? Something tripped and the entire grid collapsed. They took them about, I don't remember, nearly 24 hours to recover. But when you blow the transformer in the United States, for example, they don't have transformers. They have to get them from China. So one of the estimates was that with that you will actually need a year to recover, or minimum 6 months. Do that in India, for example. And what happens? The entire city is without electricity. Do you realize what that means, no electricity? It means on a high-rise building, no water. What do you do for water, for toilets, for food? It's civilian chaos. You want to leave the city, you will go where? How will you leave with a car if everybody starts leaving? Let's say 10,000 people suddenly want to leave. You'll have traffic jams, no end. And you'll have no facility to provide petrol. It's instant chaos which will take months to recover minimum for any country. This is the reality of drone warfare. So far we've been talking about drones eliminating the military bases or military planes or military countermeasures. When they attack civilians, there's nothing you can do. This is the great danger. This is the nature of future warfare if you really want to bring a country to its knees. And if there is a military attack, the smaller, weaker country will attack civilian facilities for this purpose in the larger country. You have no protection. Or the protection becomes prohibitively expensive or nearly impossible. I just touched upon wires, cables for high voltage and high voltage transformers. What about communication towers and dishes? So you have these microwave towers, make one come down and the entire network chain on the ground for communications goes down. The army depends on microwave communication towers. Even if they use satellites, on the ground at least, the backup against satellite is the microwave communication towers. Okay, so you back up, go to satellites, and what has China done? China has created rogue satellites for eliminating satellites. So they are the equivalent of drones, except they are satellites which go and blow up another satellite. US also has tested this technology. US and China are the two countries which have this. Russia, I don't know if they have, but Russia has a counter to this, which is a laser from the ground, which is supposed to be super secret. When during, I don't remember which war it was, the US satellites which are going above Russia suddenly became blind because they used a ground-based laser to burn out the optics of the satellite. This is way back 30 years ago. Since then, the technologies have gone far, far, far ahead. And maybe through a plane, through another laser on another satellite, you can burn out another satellite. There are many ways. So the idea is the nature of warfare has changed so much. It has moved beyond conventional means to purely technical means, where you can eliminate the other side's basic communications capability and civilian facilities, and there is no way to defend against that. Finally, China has recently announced that they have created mosquito-sized drones. So the drone is about this size. It can fly into your house through a little hole somewhere through the window. It can monitor video, audio feeds. And again, how do you protect against such a thing? It's like trying to block mosquitoes from coming inside. And so there are variations on this technology which are almost impossible to protect against. And with the high power lasers, which are the current new direction, with high power lasers, anything can be eliminated at a distance. One of the measures against drones now is high power lasers. So this is one of the forms in which future warfares will take place. There are other forms which are more economic warfare, and we see already that has started. China has started this against the rest of the world with the control over rare earth magnets. Over the last 20 years, China monopolized more than 80% of the global rare earths minerals around which high power magnets are built. And thus they control 80% of the market of high power magnets. India was sleeping at the time, it was Congress rule, and Burma had providing a large part of China's rare earth materials. India could have easily taken it at that point by helping them in other ways, and they just handed it over to China because the politicians wouldn't make money by doing something good for India, so they were not interested. But today, the entire US and Indian electric vehicle market is halted in its production practically because you do not get those rare earth markets which are all being brought from China. So the Indian government is scrambling to become independent on rare earth materials or to go for non-rare earth magnets. Trump has just made a deal with China so that they will release the rare earth magnets again. But it shows you that the future wars will be through such economic controls of monopolies. Again, China and India are the world's global producers for all the base pharmaceutical materials. So almost every medicine sold in the US is packaged from raw material or raw medicines brought from China. They control prices. Fertilizers, China put a block for Indian fertilizers which they were producing, etc. So a lot of these monopolies on specialized materials will be another form of economic warfare. The third form of warfare, which has now also come up very strongly, and all this is happening at the same time, is through patents and special technologies. So what the United States did was they put restrictions on China for AI technology. So China needed these very advanced chips, NVIDIA and others were producing, and US put a halt on those and put an intellectual property control on them. The result was China had to buy those chips by other means through other countries, or what they were doing recently was they were taking terabytes of data in hard disks, going over to the Southeast Asian countries in Thailand, Indonesia, and using their computers which were bought from, because there's no restriction, for training their AI and then going back with the trained AI model to China on the hard disks. So these are ways to circumvent. But what is interesting to see, recently Huawei is one of the Chinese government controlled companies in communications which was found to be putting spying software in mobile phones as well as various other things. So US banned Huawei, and the result was their latest offering in laptops and other technologies has still an old technology. You see the modern chips become smaller and smaller, and the size of the lines that they can mark are in nanometers. So Huawei is on 6 nanometers, US is on 2 nanometers, which is much more advanced. So Huawei is unable to reach 2 nanometers. But China, as you know, is not just a government. It is an industry and a government bound together. So all their companies are government companies practically, and the government itself is fully interested in national interest, uncompromisingly. So they are moving to build their own technologies, and where they have been able to build their own, they are ensuring it does not get to the US. So there's an AI race between US and China, each trying to prevent the other from going ahead of the other, but by such specialized controls on technologies. Another area is battery technologies, where also there's a scramble and an attempt to control. The cabal, unfortunately, has ensured that all electric vehicles are going slow because they have ensured battery technologies don't develop fast enough. Again, another area where there is this struggle going on is very advanced metamaterials, and the US is leading currently in that. China is also rapidly catching up in independent ways, but one of the means China did was they bought US professors from their most advanced training centers, brought them to China and had them train their own new generation. And some of them sold secrets, some of them sold technologies. So a lot of that has been happening under Trump, that people got arrested. Professors from reputed universities like MIT and others were arrested for leaking these advanced technologies to China. Another thing you see is control of advanced skills and training. So US has very advanced training facilities for their pilots for taking off and landing planes on aircraft carrier, and the training is very specialized. So what China did was they bought the trainers who had retired to come to China and made them train, and this was against US government agreements, because you're protecting a property, intellectual property. So many of these trainers got arrested later because they had been teaching Chinese the advanced techniques for takeoff and landing. So you see, in all this, there's an attempt to control capacities which would be critical to warfare or economic supremacy. Nuclear processing is another area which, as you see, which became significant in Iran. India, interestingly, has very advanced nuclear technologies which are way ahead of the West. And the West does not even have an inkling of how it's done, and it's protected. But you see how easy it is for these things to leak out. special radar absorbing materials for stealth fighters. Everybody is speaking of 5th generation fighters because that's going to be the future. You have to have planes or ships which cannot be detected by radar. So special materials, radar absorbing, etc. The B-2 bomber is full of that. Special metal alloys. Why is it India has to build its jet fighters, which are the most advanced in their category, but the engine have to be bought from the US, from General Electric or other? What is special? And sometimes the technology has to do with special metal alloys which can withstand very high temperatures without breaking or without melting or without cracking, without distorting, without expanding too much or without contracting too much when it becomes cold. Very specialized materials. Or the fan blades are rotating at such a high speed that they break up, the metal breaks up because of the high speed, because of the centrifugal force. And the blades are constructed sometimes with a single crystalline structure so that there are no cracks internally at a molecular level. The technology to build that, you can read all the patents you want, you'll not be able to replicate the technology because the secrecy is in the technology itself. And unless India or China can replicate these, they still have to buy those engines from those countries. Interesting. And they hold the technology. The people who know that, they are tightly controlled. So what China is doing now, for example, because they rare earth metals, they control, but the technology to turn them into magnets of a superior kind, the people who know them are under control of government now. They recently announced these people cannot speak to foreigners and they are going to be monitored so that they cannot leak out these secrets. You see where it's going. The warfare is going to more and more control of knowledge which could have been good for humanity. Facilities, technologies which could have been good for humanity, but becoming siloed in different interest groups, and that's the nature of warfare. The skill to make material itself and the technical methods to do that is now super secret. And here we come to two big differences. When the technology is owned by a corporation and when the technology is owned by the government. So we see three models. You have the US model where the corporations own the technologies. So B-2 bombers coating is owned by Northrop Grumman. That's it. Government also doesn't have access to it. You go to China, the government is the company. So government always has access to it and it can control all the companies. You come to India and you have the government and the companies separate. The government used to have the money for it, and very strangely, interestingly, I don't know, good or bad, they're giving out the technology to companies and kick-starting independent companies. Now, it has a good side, it allows innovation. It has a bad side because these companies will be bought up by the cabal. All of them at some point will just sell to the highest bidder, and the technology goes super secret and is no more part of the people. The advantage of the government owning it is that it was always available to people. All technology developed by NASA was available because it was government spent money from your taxes, so it was available to people. The moment Northrop Grumman develops the same technology, it's patented, secret, trade secret. They don't even bother to patent because it's just held within internally. It's not available to the people. And so these are different models you see, and this is going to be critical in the future. There will come a point very soon, within 10 years, where certain corporations will have very specialized technologies which could be useful for the whole world, but they will not give it out because of whatever. This is what we see already in the chip development technology. As I said, there's a 2 nanometer chip development technology. Even if India wants it, they have to buy the machines from, I believe it's in Taiwan. The machines will come, but India won't have the access to be able to replicate it or make their own machines in future. You have to keep buying the machines. And then there would be controls on the machines themselves, and so on. And finally, there is the control over software and intellectual property in software. That is a little abstract, I won't go into it, but you see the same idea, but not at the level of coding. This is leading to something very important, and I'm going to end with this idea that the humanity is on the brink of artificial intelligence taking over human intelligence. The more we use AI and find it convenient, the more we tend to rely on it, the less we exercise our own thought process. At that point, this is part of studies, children who grow up with using AI actually have less intelligence, less capability, less creativity, less adaptability, because they've already become dependent and they never gave a chance for their capacity of mind to grow. There's a lot of discussion taking place in the public domain of revising the curriculum in colleges because AI is changing the market for jobs. So they say, now stop training children, stop training human beings for those jobs because AI will take them over. Train them for the jobs AI cannot do. I say that's wrong. Your training is not for a job. There's a fundamental shift you have to make. It's in my book on education, which unfortunately is still out of print. It's a fundamental shift you have to make. For what are you educating? Are you educating for a job? Then the goals are different. Are you educating for you to develop your full power of intelligence and even the capacity to exceed your own limitations? That's the spiritual direction. And if you do not prioritize this and start training for jobs with AI replacing most of the jobs, you're now preparing human beings for other jobs. You're dulling intelligence because AI will take over in all places where some form of intellect will be required. You're dulling human intelligence and reducing us to a lower grade of mind instead of taking us to a higher grade and perhaps even higher than mind. And this is one of the big forms of warfare. And we don't realize it's a warfare. There are actually corporations which want to dull the minds of humanity to make you slaves in thought. And there's an entire takeover that's taking place. It's one of those very interesting videos you will find in the 1980s. This was the US, this was a Soviet Union defector who came to the US. And he gave a lecture of how the Soviet Union was planning to sink America. And one of the methods was through education. By dulling education, dumbing down education, and then teaching people to hate themselves and their roots and their past and their values until they could be modified and manipulated easily to become hardcore socialistic in their thinking, and then the takeover would be complete. And he gives step by step the plan, the structure of the plan, and everything he described in the 1980s has come true till now. This also is a form of warfare. It's a takeover. The Soviet Union is gone, but the cabal ideology which controlled it, which is behind many of the controls today, is still on. And it's the secret, let's say, Nazi ideology still alive. Not under that name though, but the same ideology, the same values of totalitarian control over the human mind to prevent a higher evolutionary potential. And that's where we are. And in the midst of that, you have all kinds of alignments and proxies and interests and groupings and puppet fronts and others to play the game. Corporations have become the entry point for controlling everything because corporations are not accountable to Freedom of Information Act. You cannot ask them to reveal what they do. Governments can be. So the governments are outsourcing to corporations and the cabal controls through the corporations. This is where we are today. There are a few things, actually I had a whole thing I wanted to share about Sri Aurobindo's statements regarding Persia. And it's something brilliant which he has to say. Last time we didn't complete all of it. We had already shot over the time. But he has something extraordinary to say about Persia's emergence. He describes what kind of leadership is required. He describes what are the steps for the emergence required. And a lot of that would be relevant to everybody around the world. So I'm going to keep that for next time, and then we will move to another part of our theme. This is where we are. I wanted to give a perspective of the future wars and then a summary of what just happened in Persia recently. Look at the big picture. We are at a very important transitional period. A lot of positive things could happen very soon if things go at the same pace at which they are going to free humanity. But at the same time, this biggest danger of the mind of humanity being seized or reduced largely through social media and artificial intelligence is happening at the same time. you have to make a choice. Which way will you go? In one of the articles which we will see next time, Sri Aurobindo points out how, way back, England was given that choice, whether it has to go this way or that way. And then today that choice is before others, and we're going to see how that applies to our context of discussion. But there's a choice given, and we are at that point of the choice. A part of humanity will choose to develop its full potential intellectually and beyond. Another part will say, hey, I have AI, why should I bother? Let me depend on AI. And sink rapidly, and very rapidly. It's surprising how quickly the intelligence can be dulled and reduced to something which is almost at the level of basic thinking animal intelligence, losing the humanity very quickly. And we are at that point, and it's happening today. An entire generation is coming up with insufficient intellectual capacity compared to somebody even 30 years ago who was trained 30 years ago, and now you see a dramatic drop, and the IQ intelligence quotient is also dramatically dropping among these young people. We are going to see a humanity and a split in humanity between two very different groups. So be very clear of the choice that you have to make, and make the choice for yourself, for your children, for all those who you can influence. Make them conscious. Yes, use AI, but do not yield to it. Do not stop developing your intelligence because that's convenient. Develop your capacities first, and then use that where necessary. Where possible, depend on your intelligence to be able to hone it, sharpen it, fully push it to its limits. And AI only when you are doing some time saving, not compromising on that capacity first developed within you. But don't stop with that. Go further beyond intelligence to the intuition and beyond. That would be the spiritual evolutionary purpose. So those of you who have messages in the chat box, do leave them. I will try to include them for next time. Any questions? But let's end on this theme of the larger purpose, but also the challenge before us, that it's going to be made so easy for you to not use your intelligence, that you have to choose to not fall for that ease. It's going to be made so easy for you to not think, to not understand in depth, to not look behind appearances, because everything will be pre-digested for you and given to you. Here it is, believe this, stay with this, don't think further. You have to consciously cut through appearances and look beyond. And it gets complicated, it's complex, it's not easy. That's part of the reason why we have this part of the series, to understand behind the scenes. It's not so simple. And there are always mixed interests. But you must look behind to be able to see what leads to a greater growth, evolution, and awakening of truth, despite some suffering and transition. Don't get blinded by that. And sometimes, as we read last time from Sri Aurobindo, you have to go through more struggle and more complexity to build your capacity to hold steadfast and to cut through appearances, and to be able to protect what you have earned at great struggle and pain in order to value it, so that you don't lose it, you don't give it up easily. We are somewhere in there now, with things which matter for the future. So let's make a conscious choice to influence also our spaces, our environments, our families, if nothing else. To always want to grow and develop the full human potential, which includes its spiritual potential. Namaste.